Happy Sabbath. The title, I guess, is going to be, Are we living in the last days? We all know the answer to that. Matthew 24 was what I was going to talk about, and I primarily will be. But I have a question. Has anybody been following what's been going on in the world, like the COP28 that just finished on December 12th? Has anybody paid attention to that? What's going on?
A little bit.
I pay attention to things like COP28, World Economic Forum, what they're saying, and what the Pope says, and I have been for years. And I started thinking about Matthew 24 again. And as Adventists, that's as many Christians, we know about Matthew 24. But I would like to take a little look at it again because there's some interesting things that are playing part of Matthew 24 and taking place now. We know that all things, there's nothing new under the sun. We know history repeats itself. So let's take a look at Matthew 24. Let's start at verse 1. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to shew him the buildings of the temple. Now, why would the disciples show Christ the building? He just left the temple. He knows what it looks like. Why would they show him the temple? What happened before Christ left the temple? Chapter 23, he really, really let the leaders of the church have it. He called them vipers, blind men. So here you have the disciples, they're curious. And in verse 2, Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Verse 3, And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us when these things will be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world. Does anybody know how big some of the blocks were in that temple? Some of them measured 70 feet long, 10 feet wide, 8 feet high. Those are approximate because they use cubics and we use feet and inches. So these blocks were huge. Now imagine if you were there and you were in this temple, you saw the temple, you'd come to the temple from childhood up to adult. And here comes Christ, the Messiah, saying, Hey, it's all going to be torn down. Those are huge blocks. I would question that because how massive that building was. And they were curious. And they only asked Christ three questions. When shall these things be? What are the signs of thy coming and of the end of the world? Three basic, simple questions. How did Christ answer them? The first thing Christ did, he said, Let no man, he said, take heed, pay attention, that no man deceive you. Now, that word deceive, in and of itself, has many meanings. But for a Christian, and we were talking about some during the Sabbath school lesson, we touched on a little bit about deceiving false teachers, false preachers. And this is what Christ was talking about. Don't let your leaders, don't let your preachers or books you may be reading on Christianity or on Christ or on the Bible. Don't be led astray by this. In the fourth commandment, it says, remember the Sabbath day, right? Christ is doing basically the same thing here. He's warning them that there are going to be deceptions. Fourth commandment: remember the Sabbath day. So don't forget it. You've got to remember it. We have to know when it is. Christ says, pay attention. Pay attention. Because if you don't, you're going to be deceived. So that's the first warning. Because that word deceive is to cause to roam from the truth. That's what it means. Then he says, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. The word name, they come in the name of Christ. They come in the name of God. Now, what does that mean? They come in my name. The word name means authority. It means character. So they can be clothed outwardly. They may seem like they're doing God's work, doing the work of Christ. But they're going to take many with them. They're going to take many down the wide path. They're going to take them down to destruction. Jesus knew the heart of the men, and many impostors would arise and deceive multitudes. He warns his disciples and guards them against deceptions of corruption and ambitious men. Such was the general expectation of the appearance of the Messiah among the Jews, that many would set up a claim that they were the Christ to carry out selfish purposes. That's a quote from Elder White on his sermon on Matthew 24. And we go through here, and Christ lays out many things, showing what's going to happen through the Christian age as signs. And what I want to look at today is verse 6, 7, primarily. Verse 6, and ye shall hear of wars, rumors of wars. Okay, how many wars do we have going on right now in the world today? There are 8 wars primarily going on around the world. This is war against, another nation. Rumors of wars. Well, we got people saying by 2028, we'll be in a war with China. We got a general in the Netherlands saying that we need to prepare before 2028 because we're going to be in a war with Russia. Philippines, and Russia, Philippines and China and the U.S., they're having their issues. But what does Christ say about these rumors of wars and these wars? Because none of this bothers me. It doesn't. I'm not worried about it because Christ says, see that ye be not troubled, for these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. And there have been wars throughout the Christian age. There have been rumors of wars throughout the Christian age. Should we be concerned with them? To me, not really. You may disagree. But Christ said, do not be troubled. And that brings peace to me. If he says, for me, David, don't worry about what's going on in these wars, these rumors of wars, then I should listen to what he says. Are we in the last days? I believe we are. I don't think we have, as Faye said, 20 years. I think we don't have 10. We could still have another 1,000 years, couldn't we? No man knows the hour or the day or the season. Now, what does it mean for the nation shall rise against the nation? Does that mean America and Russia? It can also mean state against state. The kingdoms and kingdoms against kingdoms. Same thing. But then Christ said, and there shall be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in diverse places. And COP28 is all about climate change, climate control, how do we save Mother Earth, as the Pope says. In COP28 was the first time in 28 meetings that they've had for climate, that there was a pavilion for religion. They had a pavilion there for the three major Christianity, the Muslims, and there was one other major Christianity, major religion. I forget which one that is. But it's the first time they ever had religious implications there. This would have been the first time the Pope went to any of these 28 meetings. But because he had the flu, he sent a messenger. And they came out of COP28 saying we need to stop using petroleum because too much carbon dioxide is being put in the air. Now, you may believe that this, or you may not believe it, that there's too much carbon dioxide in the air, and we need to do this. But I ask another question: why? Why is the world rushing towards this climate change, this climate catastrophe they're saying that's going to happen? Can anybody give me a suggestion on what or why they're doing this?
Somebody type control and illusion of control in the chat.
Oh, chat. Okay. I have two screens here, so I try to look at the screen over here. So illusion and control. Yes.
I believe it's leading up to the one world harder.
And who's going to lead in that one world order? Who's the principal power behind it?
Pope, the papacy.
The papacy. Has anybody read Laudato Deum?
We've heard excerpts.
Okay. Laudato Si, that was this current pope's first encyclical. Laudato Deum, he just put out not too long ago. Laudato Deum is really interesting because he puts out that we're not being quick enough, we're not being persuasive enough on bringing all the nations to help the poor, to protect the earth, and that we need to work for the nations, the leaders need to work faster. And there needs to be one ruler, one person. Now, this is from the Catholic Recorder. Pope Francis this is November 23, 2023, before COP28, before he got sick and couldn't make it. But he did send I think it was a bishop, and I can't pronounce the Italian name. Pope Francis is set to speak at the inauguration of the first ever Faith Pavilion during the upcoming 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference in the United Arab Emirates. As political leaders from across the globe gather for November 30 to December 12 to assess how well they are addressing climate change, religious officials, including Francis, who is both a head of state and the leader of the worldwide Catholic Church, will have a new prominence. It will have a new place of prominence. Did y'all catch that? He is both head of state, leader of the worldwide Catholic Church, and he will have a new place of prominence. We know that the Catholic Church is trying to, or will be, regain all its power again. So here they're saying before he ever gets there, before it ever starts, they're already saying he's going to have a new place of prominence in the world order. That doesn't really concern me either. Too much. I want to read now from, I'm going to spell it, Caritas, Invariat. This is what he said. This is in number 67. I'm reading straight from the Vatican website. In the face of unrelenting growth of global independence, there is strongly felt need, even in the midst of a global recession, for a reform of the United Nations organization. So he's saying here, we need to reform the United Nations. We need to remake it. And likewise, of economic institutions and international finance, so that the concept of the family of nations can acquire real teeth. He wants to have the United Nations remade and not to be as weak as they are now. He wants to be able to give the United Nations real teeth, real power. One also senses the urgent need to find innovative ways of implementing the principle of the responsibility to protect and giving poor nations an effective voice in sharing decision making. And he goes on. For all this, there is an urgent need of a true world political authority. Such authority would not be regulated by law. Let that sink in. Remake the United Nations. Give it teeth. And it needs to have a true world political authority. All because of their climate change. You know, when I was growing up in the Adventist church, going to the schools, we all know Sunday law is coming. We all know that, we're not going to buy and sell. I mean, these are just normal understandings. But I never could figure out how they were going to do it. How would they make it where people cannot buy and sell? How are they going to control the people so they can set up this one world order? Well, we now have the CBDCs, which is the central bank digital currency. A couple of my banks have already been suggesting that I sign up for this digital currency. Think about that. Digital currency online. If they don't like what you're doing, if you're not doing what the government's telling you to do, like taking the jab, and I'm going to use that term instead of the vaccine, whatever, as you know, we just went through, they can cut off your money supply. They can make it where you can't buy. They cut off your card, cut off your access to money. How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to have gas go to work to take your loved one to the hospital? Because they will control your bank accounts. They will know everything you spend, what you spend it on, when you spend it. They will know immediately what's going on. Cannot buy and sell. That's how this new world order is going to take control of that. I never saw that when I was younger. Never understood it. Never imagined any of this. All because of climate control, climate change. We look back at Matthew 24, where it states earthquakes in diverse places. It talks about famines, pestilences, and we just had a pestilence, and there's going to be another one. They're still now talking about another one they're worried about. I try to look at Matthew 24 and other parts of the Bible and see how current events are playing along with the prophecies. And this is a prophecy, Matthew 24. Because we are to watch, we are to know, we're to guard what we know. Not that we can tell what day our Lord is coming back. No. But so that we can be prepared, because later in Matthew 24, it talks about the good man, if he had been paying attention, he would have known when the thief comes, and he'd be ready for him, wouldn't he? If we do not look at what's going on in the world, look at prophecy, look at the Bible, how are we going to be prepared? I know many people who are my friends, who I love, and who are just acquaintances. We don't need to worry about that. And they're true. But paying attention to what's going on around the world, around our community. That's not being worried. That's paying attention. Not to set a time or a date. Now back to verse 7. Is the world in a famine right now? Yes and no. Parts are. Hawaii cannot produce enough food to support its own population. That's the definition of a famine. So technically, Hawaii is in a state of famine. But now in the World Economic Forum, they're talking about the next calamity being a water issue of water. You see all these lakes and rivers drying up. And I heard our current president make a slight mention to we might have water issues because of climate change. So famines right now in Europe, some of the nations are making their farmers cut 40 to 60% of their farmland or their cattle land. You got to cut it back 40 to 60% to save water and not to pollute the air. Farms, cattle farmers, sheep farmers, pig farmers, all these different farms that the world needs, well, they don't need that kind of stuff, but they think they do, are going to lose 40 to 60% of their product. What happens when a nation loses 40 to 60% of its crops? Famine will happen. So as we're looking current events to what Christ is telling his disciples to look for or to watch out for, be aware of. The nations, COP28, World Economic Forum, United Nations, the Health Organization, they are taking us to a position relatively quick on a state of famine. Pestilences. We have this COVID variant. We have 30 or 40 different COVID variants now. What happened in the last COVID? They just made lockdowns, didn't they? You couldn't go to stores unless you were 6 feet apart, you wore a mask, and all this. They closed down playgrounds for kids, closed down the schools, isolation. And look at how the world bowed down to it. Training the people to obey the government and giving up their liberties. All because of a pestilence. Now, I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it wasn't real or it was real. That's not my point. But look at the control that the governments around the world had upon their people. You had mayors who said, hey, you can't go out to the playground. You can't go to school. You can't go to stores. Shut down the churches. Mayors putting out edicts. In the last days, the followers of Christ, they won't be able to buy and sell, will they? We're not going to have a source of income. We're not going to have homes. We won't have a bank account. Everything, we're all sitting in our homes. It's going to be gone. In August, my wife and I, we lost our home to a flood. Unexpected. A levee broke. A wall of water. I'm 6'2" and it came up to my chest, hit the back of my house. And the levee's miles away. Devastated my home. And you know something? I wasn't worried about having a home. I mean, that's God's job. Let him handle it. Did I get depressed at times? Yeah. But at the back of my head, I said, no, David, it's not your problem to deal with. It's God's. Give it to him. And within a matter of days, my adopted daughter and her mother contacted my wife and I and said, hey, move back to North Dakota. We got a home for you. So, okay, after talking to my wife, we'll get a U-Haul and come up there. They said, no, we're coming down to get you. Had I worried about it and tried to figure it out on my own, I don't know what would have happened. It wouldn't have been good. We let God handle all these issues, the wars, the rumors of wars, all these things going on. It's in his providence, not mine. I was blessed. I didn't get COVID. Friends around me got it. Some very severe. I wasn't touched, and I didn't care. I didn't let it bother me, didn't let it worry me. Give it to God. I guess my message today, we are in the last days. We see all these horrible things going on, all these monstrosities going on. We see a new sexual movement going on with this, oh, I'm a cat, I'm a dog, I'm a girl, I'm a boy, when you're not what you really are, or mentally saying you're not what you really are. And people are buying into it. It's being forced down your throats by the government even. Okay. Not in my hands. All these mass shootings, all these killings, all these murders going on that are thrown up in our faces on the news. I don't like it. I'm sad for the people. But it ain't going to bother me. You know, God's good if we leave it in his hands. And we don't try to control it. We don't try to take it upon ourselves. Let God lead us. Trust, not in yourself. Trust in God, his Son. And let them lead us. Don't worry about the calamities that are going to fall us. We've been told. Our founders wrote a lot about the calamities that are coming. They knew, they saw, they were led, and they didn't worry. We have to keep our sight on Christ, keep our sights on God and his plan. I guess that's really all I have to say. Is to trust God, trust his Son. Let's have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, I must apologize. I should have started off in prayer, but I was praying during the whole service. And for that, I am sorry. Father, as we have looked at Matthew 24, some small aspects of it. You know, the whole world right now is in distress. They're in fear. They're so afraid of all these different things that you already foretold that were going to be and have been. But I want to thank you that we have your word, that we have your assurance that we should not worry. And for that, thank you. And Father, as we continue discussing different things, I want to say thank you for everything you've done for all of us, keeping us safe, taking care of us through the hard times, looking out for us, and opening doors. Thank you. I say these in the name of Jesus. Amen.